Thank you for joining us here at Universal. You're in the Learning Center. My name is Neil McKenzie. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing, and we got a lot of fun things happening this week. In this space, we've hosted or will host 16 events over 5 days. We do record them all, so we will make those available to you. If you registered for any of them, you'll get a link with access to take that on at your leisure about a week after market, and you can take advantage of that content. And we've had some great conversations about a lot of different things, and so excited to have Lila Allen and Mel Studak here from AD Pro to give some inside secrets and talk about some things that they're working on that I think can benefit certainly your business. If it's your first time to Universal, welcome. There's a ton to see. The building's 115,000 square feet. We have a new collection on floor 3 with Coastal Living magazine called Weekender that we encourage you to check out. We got some great in-stock looks on floor 2 with Miranda Kerr Home. And then on floor 3, we have some special order upholstery offerings that are shipping in 6 to 8 weeks that you can customize online in any of the fabrics that we have. So take advantage of that. Just check in at the front desk afterwards. And then immediately following this, we have a great party with our friends from Architectural Digest taking place really throughout these showrooms. So there'll be a couple different bars, some great food, some laughs, and some good music. So please feel free to stay afterwards and enjoy. And without further ado, I'll kick it over to Lila and Mel. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much. So much.
All right. Here's the
Perfect.
you're in charge of that.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for coming. It's great to see such a full room here. I'm Lila Allen. I'm the senior editor of Architectural Digest Pro, or AD Pro. AD Pro, if you're not already familiar with it, is Architectural Digest section for designers like you, for working designers that are looking for advice on your business, recaps of what's coming to market, trend reporting, news in the industry. So we're really here as a resource for you to make your life easier. And we've also recently introduced a designer directory that allows you to connect with potential clients who are readers of AD. So we'll talk more about that towards the end of this presentation, but we're so happy to be here. And thank you so much to Universal for having us. It's a treat to get to share this kind of information with you. And I do think that pitching and talking to editors and learning how to present your work is something that I certainly get asked about all the time. I'm sure Mel does too. So glad to be able to run through it with you today. So
Yes.
Mel's going to kind of give us an overview of what we'll be talking through today.
Yes, we're going to try to keep it to 45, 50 minutes. This is a topic Lila and I could talk prolifically about. But we do, of course, have the cocktail party after that. We can answer any questions you have should we not be able to fit them in here. Here's a little run through of what we're going to be talking about today, really from start to finish, how you can find the right publication for your project, how you can communicate, figure out which editor is the best for that section. We do understand that this is often a full-time job. Many of you have probably worked with a publicist or a PR agent in the past. Many of you probably don't need this. I see an AD 100 in here. Hi, Corey. So this is really just best practices that maybe if you're just starting out and want to DIY it, good for you to know. Even makes you a better collaborator with the PR agent because you can understand how their process works in working with us too. So we hope you can get all of that within this presentation.
And by the way, there is plenty more content kind of related to these subjects, and we're happy to share some additional reading with you after this. So I believe Universal will be sending a follow-up email, so we'll give you some kind of extra bonus homework if you want it.
That's what you want after market, right? More
Yeah,
homework. More reading.
exactly. So kind of the first thing is you want to figure out which outlet, of course, is right for you. And I think there's no better thing you can do than to be a reader yourself. Every publicist I know has about 30 subscriptions. Of course, I don't think a designer is expected to do that, but it is probably good to be familiar with sort of what's on the market. And just, as a writer and editor, sometimes it feels like you're sending your work into the void. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is to have someone come up to you and say, oh, I read your piece on such and such, and I just loved it. And to know that there are people like you, like the readers that we're seeking out that are seeing this content. So I think doing your homework pays dividends. So familiarize yourself with certain writers. A lot of them cover the same beats. And I think that's a great place to start.
Mm.
Finally, you want to think about not only who you want to tell your story, but who you want to hear your story. Are you trying to speak to a professional audience like we do at Pro? Are you trying to speak to kind of a first-time homeowner? Are you trying to speak to a DIYer? Are you trying to speak to someone with a lot of money? Like, these are all different audiences that you can find in different publications. So at AD, we try to have a little something for everybody. We have different sections that we call verticals. There's Clever, which is really for like first-time homeowners. It's very shoppable. We have AD Classic, which is kind of elevated, like very high design homes. Same with the print magazine. And here at Pro, we have, of course, professional resources for you. So every time we get a pitch, it's great if it comes to the right person right away, but we are also always sharing with one another because we're one team. So if a house comes in for AD.com and it's not a good fit there, but maybe it's a good fit for Clever, we're sharing stories with one another all the time.
Yes. And so once you figure out maybe which vertical or which publication is best for you, then you want to do a little more digging and figure out who on that staff is the best person to communicate with. As Lila said, we are often forwarding where we might feel is a better fit. But if you are able to do that due diligence and empty our inbox a little bit by sending it to the right person, we really appreciate that. Even better than that is if you're able to identify the section it's in. So like Lila was saying about Pro, we cover industry news. We have more in-depth features analyzing trends we're seeing, fair recaps. If you're able to say, I think this is a good fit for your need-to-know news, that shows us that you've put work in to say, I understand what your content is. I think I'm a good fit here, and that's why. If I see a subject line in my inbox that says the name of a column that we do, I'm like, oh, they understand us. They know. It makes me want to click on that and see why they think they're a good fit. Then lastly, when you do reach out, also very important, via email is best. Please do not call us. I will send you straight to my voicemail and maybe not call you back. And within that email, 3 short paragraphs at most. Tell us, we'll get into this a little bit more, but why your story is different than someone else's. Give us the main gist of that project. We want definitely images, 1 to 3 in that body of the email. Those are the best shots, those wow moments from that project. If there are more, linking a Dropbox or a WeTransfer is great. And if you feel like you have more to say beyond those 3 paragraphs, put it in what we would call like a press release or another document that you could then attach to the email. So that way, if we're more intrigued and we want to know more, we can click on that Word doc or PDF, whatever it is. But if I get an email and it's just copy, I'm like, my eyes glaze over. I'm like, on to the next. We probably have 300 emails in our inbox right now. And yeah, I don't have time to read it.
Unfortunately. And that imagery, just having some kind of teaser is so important because that lets us know. I mean, we'll talk about imagery quite a bit in this presentation, but that's a critical piece. It's hard to continue the conversation if we don't have some idea of what the space looks like. There's nothing worse than like wasting your time if we're not ultimately not going to be interested in the project. So putting that first image out there is really helpful. We do have a type. So the first piece of advice in terms of pitching a project that we're going to love, now that you sort of have an overview of how to actually get the pitch out there, is, and you might have even thought about this in terms of like your own social presence, like what is the wow factor? You may have heard the term like, what's it called? Scroll stopping. Like what's going to stop the scroll? If somebody's going through Instagram, they pass Architectural Digest, are they going to stop and be like, whoa, what is this room? I need to take a closer look at it. So when we look at projects, we're always thinking like, we have to get the word out about these stories. And there's nothing better for getting someone to read a story besides a great headline and a really great image. And really, you need both to get people to click. So we're always going to be looking for that scroll stopping image. And you also want to think about what we can't see in the story. So for example, we ran a story about Nate Berkus and Jeremiah Brent's house that had this really beautiful, naturally lit kitchen with this sort of like greenhouse window. And for me, at least, that was kind of like the wow moment in this house. And it also had a great story that I think Mel's going to talk about in just a moment. But there's a great phrase that I love in news writing. It's called a hey, Martha. If you can just imagine like 2 old folks sitting in rocking chairs on a porch and they're reading newspapers. And one of them goes, Martha, you got to hear this. Like a really just kind of fun story, like something that's going to get people's attention and get them talking.
Yes. And so, in addition to that great wow moment, that statement image, we want that narrative. We are journalists at the end of the day. We want to tell a great story. Actually, in the example Lila mentioned about Nate Berkus and Jeremiah's home, that was a West Village townhouse we featured about a year ago. And the great story behind it is they had lived in that home, moved to Los Angeles, started a family, and then when they moved back to New York, were able to get that home was on the market, and they were able to move right back in and rebuild it now for their family. And so that kind of became the narrative. Not only was it a beautiful home, but it had this beautiful story. As she was saying, with things that aren't always seen, that story could be all the great hidden storage in that kitchen. Maybe it's a material that you found, a fabric that was in the grandma's closet that you then turned into an upholstery for the sofa. Any little detail like that, it doesn't have to be. Oftentimes we understand that clients want to be anonymous in their projects. And so it doesn't necessarily have to relate to the family itself. But if you can tell a story in your design, the creativity, the innovation, we're always good at finding stories. But if you can tell us in that original pitch, it helps us too.
Totally. And finally, we're going to talk about photography today, but definitely get it shot and think about where you want those images to land, which publication you think you want to be in. The unfortunate reality of publishing these days is that we really do rely a lot on your photography, what we call pickup photography. While the magazine goes and does their own shoots, often for online, we are unable to shoot things ourselves. So we're really depending on there being supplied photography. So that's definitely an investment that is worth making, I think, really before much else. And when you get something shot, think about not only the sort of large establishing shots of a room, but a few details as well. Maybe it's a really beautifully finished edge on a table, or maybe it's a vignette you've styled really interestingly. Because not only will that potentially have a place in something like a home tour, but if we're looking at it and we don't have a place for that story right away, it may kind of get us thinking about something else. Again, going back to that coffee table example, maybe a week later, we're like, wait, we should really do a story about how to style a coffee table. We saw such a beautiful one last week, and here we just got another one today. This could be a roundup. And this happens literally at least once or twice a week. So, if something doesn't fit in the story that you've pitched, it doesn't mean there isn't something else that it can turn into.
Yeah. We have a column on Pro called Having a Moment, where Hannah Martin, the AD or Architectural Digest senior design editor, when she's seeing home tours that come into her inbox every day, she starts to get a feel of, I've been seeing a lot of this. And so she writes a column on Pro, pulling these shots from these different projects. So we may reach out for a closer vignette shot if maybe your full home's not toured, or if it is and we want to put it in another story. That happens quite a bit. And also to Lila's point about trying to fit to a publication you like, another good secret for that is if you know a publication has the photographer network that they use quite a bit. For us, those popular names are like Douglas Friedman. He's generally shooting at least one home in our publication. Mm-hmm. It can be pricey, but have Douglas shoot your home. Go to your favorite magazine and see who they're using photography-wise and have that person shoot your home, because that's another way into that publication to say, I use someone that you already work with. It's in the style that you already like to use. Like I said, it can be pricey, but that is one way to at least get your foot in the door.
Yeah, they know what our art director likes. And often those photographers have a relationship with the publication separately. So you might be getting kind of like double for your money in a certain way. Like they may be reaching out and saying, hey, you've got to see this house I just shot. It's amazing. And also, I mean, these trend stories can really come out of just the strangest places. This week, I will tell you, we're talking about corn. So you really never know where it's going to come from. And it could be like, oh, this material that's really popular is starting to come out is like made from corn. And there's a corn cob stool that everybody has in their Brooklyn apartment. And I mean, really, you never know where these things are going to go. So, if there's a fun detail, include it.
Well, they do, because they take us there and then we cover it. And lastly, just be easy to work with. I think you guys probably feel this too with the people you collaborate with. And, you have one bad installer and you're like, maybe I don't call him for that project again. So very similar with us. In terms of how we work, that often means being responsive in your emails. If we send you questions via email, we may give you a few days to answer them, but if you can get it back to us like in 24 hours, that's great. Like I said, being very concise and short in your emails, being very specific, having images easy to access. And the flip side of that is we may not be very responsive back to you. Inboxes are full. So if you don't hear back from us, responding maybe once a week, but not like an everyday, did you receive that? Do you have an update on that story? What's the timeline? Once a week is good. I've probably seen it. I maybe will respond to it. It may just take me some time, but please don't call me.
Sorry. And we really do our best, but unfortunately the volume is just kind of crazy sometimes. And a lot of it's really great and people we love, but we're not always able to respond, at least in the way that I would like. Great.
Some
Excellent.
things we've been talking about, Dropbox, Drive with your photos, labeling very clearly. A big one is also making sure you have usage rights and what kind of usage rights you have to those images, making us understandable that you have full clearance for letting us use those photos is very important.
Mhm. And we love, one of the first things we'll probably do if we haven't met you before and we get pitched your project is we'll go to your website, we'll go to your social, just see what's going on, kind of get a sense of your personality. So we love designers that are active and keep an updated website. I understand that's not your first priority as a designer, but it's great if it looks decent and reflects who you are. However, I would just caution you to not overshare projects if you're shopping them around to editors, because certain publications, AD being one of them, especially print, is really strict about exclusivity. So this happens even with like celebrities. If they've taken videos around their house and shown it to 1 million people on Instagram, it's sort of lost a lot of its newness for the readers. So if you're going to share a project, just be aware of that and maybe hold some back for a publication.
The only exception we did allow on that one was rapper Drake. We did his Toronto mansion, and it was right when COVID hit, and he did a music video in his home because he couldn't shoot it elsewhere. And so we're like, okay, we'll let that slide. But normally we
Drake
would
gets
have
a
been in
pass.
trouble. We have rules.
Great. So yeah, that's sort of an overview, but there are a few things that we'll be looking for within the pitches that just let us basically is this a go or a no-go right away? So there are a few kind of critical ingredients we'll need.
Yeah. So for starters, again, in that original pitch, if it's, say, a collection that's going to be coming out soon, giving us an exact launch date. If it's a few months out, we understand that things change and, maybe there's a technology issue at the end that pushes it back. But to give us any sort of estimate of timeline is super important. And any opening dates, if you're opening a new store or showroom or what have you, those dates are very important. Many of you may not know this, but magazines are planned really far in advance. Our print issue starts 6 months out. There's a joke in our industry that it really is Christmas in July. We are putting those gift guides together in July. And so much like a furniture collection here at Market, as soon as we can know who's being collaborated with, what projects in the works with the home projects, sometimes we know those 2 years out because you start them 2 years out. And if you say, I have this really cool client doing this really cool thing, let us know and we can keep an eye and keep track, especially for news and collection launches and things like that. Anything with digital, we like to have 2 months is ideal, just because we do have to assign that story out and get images. And there's so much involved in that process that the more time you can give us, the more meaningful that story is going to be. Not necessarily that you can tell a story that was rushed, but we can tell. So as much timeline as you can offer is super important.
Yeah, and you may have noticed if you get a magazine subscription that it arrives at your house a month ahead of whatever it says on the cover, and it's going to print about a month before that, which means that the assignments are coming in 3 to 4 weeks before that. So you can just imagine how far back this actually goes. That's why it's so early.
Yes. And another important point to include in that first email is if there's exclusivity that can be had. So like she said, with print, any home tour, we should be the first place that has published that story. Oftentimes, if we can get an exclusive on a collection launch or news of a new furniture line that's being manufactured, anything that we can be the first to tell, when there's first look or exclusive in that headline, that's a huge win for us. So that's a big bonus. If that's in the headline, that gives us, that emoji with the big eyes and says, we're going to have the first say in this. So if that is possible, maybe it's 6 hours before you give it to another publication. Maybe it's a week that the terms of that exclusivity can change. But that's something to keep an eye that press is always very seeking. And lastly, high res, high quality images. It's going to keep coming up. like she said, we often rely on provided images for most of our digital content. So if those can be really high quality, that enhances the story even more. And when we take these to pitch meetings months out, we need to have images to be able, if I took an idea to a meeting, they would say, well, what does it look like? You know, so much of our industry is about design and making it look good. And so we can't really take a story to a pitch meeting until there's images to show. And those don't have to be final images. It can be scouting shots where you're a few months out from a project and just to get an idea of the space, we understand things change. So any preview you can give us months out is great.
Definitely. And I know sometimes it might be tempting, especially if you're shy or you don't have a lot of experience with interviews, and that you may prefer to like send written responses. And while that can work from time to time, like truly the story will be so much better if you do a phone or an in-person interview. Like I know when I'm reading, I can tell if somebody sent a written quote. It just doesn't have the same flow to it. And I think that having an actual conversation allows for a little bit more back and forth. And also, honestly, I think allows us to pick up on a little bit more of nuance. So we can ask, like, oh, can you clarify what you meant by this word? You know, and just be able to have that back and forth. So I think ultimately it's in your best interest for getting your story out there as well. All right, here's our deep dive into photography that we've been promising. So for getting a great photograph, we've given you some of the information you already need, but one thing that you're absolutely going to need, aside from a great photographer, is your client's permission to show the images, which sometimes they don't want to give. It may be that they want to stay anonymous, or they may not want their home shot at all. I know, especially with there are a lot of celebrities that don't like that, or people that are very private about their homes. So there are some designers that you can make your contract work for you. This can be a condition in your contract, like I need to be able to shoot the space upon completion. You may or may not want your clients present when they're shooting. I don't know if they'll be hovering behind you, but it could be nice to have like a little more creative free reign.
Give them a spa day, you know?
Yeah, might be a good day to send them to lunch. And if they are concerned about anonymity, but they are okay with you shooting, there are plenty of publications, AD being one of them, that will publish anonymous projects. Not everyone will, though. So, you can assure them we take great lengths on our side to make sure that clients' locations are not identifiable, and especially like details around their children and things like that. We try not to like tell the neighborhood where they are. We try not to like give too many details about where the kids' room is in the house. So we try to be thoughtful about this and make sure that it really is anonymous.
And as you, when you do your photography, of course, like we were saying, if you're interested in a certain publication, finding maybe a photographer that works in that network. But really, it's also just about finding a photographer that works with you. This is another one of your right-hand men. And so you need to make sure that it's someone that you're going to click with. Perhaps it's in a style that you feel is really, really representative of your projects, that can capture them the way you want them to be captured. So finding someone that really clicks, no pun intended. And while you're at it, a stylist too. I think we can often tell when photography has not had a stylist. It feels like that real estate photo, and we're looking at pictures and like, does someone live here? It doesn't really feel like these cabinets have been opened before. A stylist can be a really big tool. One of our go-tos at AD, his name is Colin King. He's described his role in the past as being the magician of vibes, is what he does to an interior, and I loved that. And I think it really speaks to the feeling that can be captured in a photo. So if you haven't worked with a stylist before, recommended.
And Colin just put out a book too, so that was written by Sam Cochran, our features editor for print. So if you want to see some great styling, there's definitely some in there. I'll give you a tip that I just learned from him, is that these like beautiful trees you often see in shoots of his, they're branches. They're just stuck into a thing of dirt, which I loved as somebody who can't keep a plant alive. Colin King. Mm-hmm. And like we said, stylist photographers can also be your ally in getting through to us. And finally, you want to think not just for our sake, but also for your own about shooting for social. At this point, that's probably a part of your repertoire already. But also, video is now something that is more and more common. I'm sure you guys have seen this on Instagram with the algorithm changes really prioritizing video, and it might be a little intimidating to get into that. I know it is for me. I think Mel's a little better with the edits than I am, but think bright, light images. Think about the cropping that you're going to see. Full room shots and wide angles outperform close-ups and vignettes, we have found.
And I'd also recommend keeping track of the data on social. I know it feels like one other thing to do, but our AD social editor realized in 2022 it must have been the year of bathroom renovations, because anytime we posted a bathroom, it went gangbusters. People liked it, people saved it. And she knew if we were having a slow social day, we're going to put up a bathroom because we know it's going to perform well. So if you can do that with, maybe it's an interior, maybe it's a color palette, a material that you see is working well and getting you new followers, keep up with that.
Definitely.
And one last thing for shoot day, if you can style in advance, I think that's really helpful for photographers to be able to get in and start going at it in the morning. And one full day for a shoot is generally what we do at AD. If you're adding social to that as well, you may find it even longer. But of course, you do have to be privy to your client's schedule as well.
Definitely. And we recognize there is a place for DIY shoots as well. So just a few tips on getting those right. You might be using these for your own social. You might be doing this for getting a really good quality scouting shot or updating your client on progress in a project. Just a few tips from our photo editors is to, first of all, clean off your lens on your iPhone camera. Turn off the lights in the room. This is a really easy way to make your photograph way better for us, I will say. Turning off the overhead lights, because we get a lot of kind of awkward real estate photos where the lighting is just a little stiff. If you can just turn those off, let the natural light in, you're going to have a little more wiggle room in terms of being able to edit the photo and kind of manipulate it in post-production if that's something you're going to be interested in doing. You can turn on the grid lines on your phone, make sure it's all lined up. And also another pro tip I've gotten and I've been trying to implement myself is not to take the photo up here, but to take it down here. It just gives you a better angle on the room. Finally, some of you probably know this already, but if you're taking a photo with some natural light and it looks kind of blown out, just tap the brightest part of the screen and it will kind of sink in just to give you a little bit more dimension. And again, that will give you more room to edit in post and just adjust it to be a little bit more visible. Mm-hmm. And finally, it's great that if you take 200 photos, and there are lots of options, but I will say it's really helpful if you can edit down to the top 20 to 30 when you send to us. Just makes it a little bit more, just easier to go through.
Mm. And Lila's tip with the shoot from the hip, that creates a perspective as though you're walking into the room. And there's also a really good tool on if you have an iPhone, the Photos editor. When you do the crop, you can actually use a tool that kind of flips the photo horizontally and creates straight lines. So the eye really likes it. If you ever see townhouse photos in New York and you're like, how are they getting that photo? Because you're standing in front of the house. But they're using this app and it creates a perspective that feels like you're approaching it, which I find works really well with interior shots as well.
So we've talked to you a lot today about how to kind of cut through the noise in our inbox. Unfortunately, email inboxes are super crazy. I feel like it got way crazier during COVID too, just because everybody is remote now. So this is some ways that you can definitely kind of, I think, tilt the scales in your favor. But there are other ways to kind of catch our attention. And one of them is this new tool we have that we just introduced at the end of January, the AD Pro Directory. I know we have a couple of members in here, which makes me really happy. It is AD's new resource for connecting designers like you with potential clients. So the reason that we started this is that our editor-in-chief and our homes and gardens editors were constantly being asked for recommendations for designers, which is honestly a lot of work. And also there are a lot of great designers out there. We don't always know what somebody is looking for. So we wanted to make a resource where readers of AD could go to find AD-approved designers. So for the last year, we worked on developing this platform where you can apply to join. You submit a portfolio of images, you have a statement about your work, and we actually have a directory editor, Dan Howarth, who used to work at Dezeen and has been in the industry for years. he goes through and kind of works with people on finessing their applications. And if someone is really up to AD standards, they get published on this directory, and it's accessible from every section of our site. People can search on it through state, through profession. I'll show you a screenshot in just a minute of what it actually looks like. But I will just say, like, editorially, it's been an awesome tool for us because we have a short list of like great designers right at our fingertips. And it's all over the country. So something we try to work on all the time is geographic diversity. So, if we're looking for designers in the Midwest or designers in Colorado, like, we can easily do that now, which is amazing. It's been a great tool for us. If you decide to join, we do try to give coverage to these designers. We want to support people who are supporting us in turn. So we've been producing stories, like roundups of like the top bathrooms we've seen on the directory. We ran a trend story that did really well recently. It was about like warm chocolate. What do we call it? White chocolate minimalism, about this like sort of neutral modern interiors that we are seeing.
White boucle, all the white boucle.
Lots of white boucle. You also get like marketing materials with the AD logo on it. And we're just starting to introduce in-person events, like networking events with editors and with other directory members. So we'll be doing like a little preview of a collection in New York soon, which I'm very excited about. And you get access to AD Pro, which I'm a big fan of myself. So just to show you what this looks like, if you're a consumer and you need a designer, you navigate to this page. You can, pick the profession that you need, and you'll get this list of results. You can scroll through, and then finally you get your own profile page. So it's been really helpful, I think, like, Condé Nast has an entire SEO team that we meet with once a month, if not more, learning best practices for how we can rank in Google search. And we developed this with that in mind. So we are seeing designers kind of go up in search as we've been doing this. And we, again, try to link back to their profile too. So if you'd like to talk about this more, or you have more questions for us on editorial or best practices with pitching your work, Mel and I will be here, and we would love to talk to you more. So do you want to open up the floor to questions?
Yeah, I think we can open it up for questions.
Yes.
Oh,
Our hostess with the mostest.
Thank you very much, ladies. Incredibly helpful.
Do you want to?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. So thank you. This is very helpful. So this might seem kind of like an erroneous question about percentages. So of course we hear about noise in the inbox, and then you also mentioned like certain things pique our interest. So if you had to like put a number to the percentage of times your interest is piqued in the midst of noise, what would you, I know it's kind of like just an offbeat question, but what would you say? Because I'm asking in terms of, we know there are some brilliant designers. We know that it's a vast request to say, I want to be a part of this beautiful, the whole perspective and relationship and dynamic and the brand. So yeah, that's just a question of percentages, noise versus interest.
yeah.
Thank
My
you.
first thought, is I probably get 400 emails a day. One of those is of interest in terms of editorial coverage.
Yeah.
I will say my interest is piqued more than that. It gets
Please
piqued.
reveal.
I get piqued quite a bit.
Yay, okay, yeah.
My interest gets piqued quite a lot. But that doesn't always, unfortunately, doesn't always mean we can do something with it. First of all, like, our budget is what it is. We can only do X number of stories per week. For me, I do 3 features a week plus like a real estate roundup. So I have to, think about that. We have traffic goals we have to meet. We have other kind of internal goals like time spent. We have to think about making sure we have stories that allow us to rank in search, or, if we're going to have product in a story, are we striking a balance, and are we telling different kinds of stories? So it may be that a project is absolutely amazing and we're honestly heartbroken that we can't do something with it at a time. So if you get a rejection, like, I know it sucks, but please, like, don't take it too much to heart. And I think that's true also with writers. They pitch us all the time, and I'm like, it's a great idea, but like, we've done it before, or we can't do it right now.
Thank you. I should just
course.
also say I'm Noelle Benitez of Unparalleled Eye Designs. All right, cool. I can pass this.
You should definitely give us your card. Hi.
I have two questions, but they're one's really quick. So the first one is, what was that app you were talking about for flipping the photo?
Yeah. So,
Oh, sorry.
it's just your camera app. If you have an iPhone,
Uh-huh.
and then in the upper right hand, I believe it says edit or
Is that it?
yep. And then on the very bottom, there's like 3 different icons. I don't have my phone on me. And it's the one that's for crop. And when you
Yeah.
click into that,
Uh-huh.
there should be 3 options at the bottom. One should be to like twist it. One's, I don't know, the other way, but there's one for horizontal flip. And if you do that one,
Oh,
it'll move it forward. I see everyone's mouths like,
wait a minute. Forward flip. Is it a little round thing?
yeah, maybe the middle one.
I think it's a little square, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you like take
Not
the exterior of a house, you can make it fix the perspective.
Okay. Maybe somebody can help me.
I'm sure there's an influencer in here that could give
I'll-
far
or I'll
better
just
editing
Google
tips
it.
than
I'll
I.
Google it. But the other question I had is, and this just popped into my head, is if when you get published, and you're communicating with your contact there, and you say thank you, is that enough, or should we be like writing, a note back to you or anything like that? I just thought about some other, yeah. Is that enough?
I think it's definitely enough.
Okay.
I mean, some people go beyond that, but honestly, like to be honest, like I feel kind of weird if somebody sends me something. Like
Yeah.
it's so kind and like I know it's coming from a good place, but like I'm genuinely covering people like purely editorially because I like believe in their work.
Okay.
And I don't want you to think it's like a favor or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Like so, a thank you is plenty.
Like via email or a note?
Oh, via email. I
Okay,
think
good.
any thank
Okay.
you is
Okay.
I'm grateful for it.
Okay.
Oh, one over.
Oh, great.
Gonna make me work for it.
Oh.
For the directory applications. So, so I think when you apply for the directory, you're prompted to send in up to 5 photos. But often what we see is that when it actually goes on the site, it might be that it's cropping in a funny way, or like, he might take a look at your website and say, I think this other project that you featured might be a better fit for our aesthetic. Would you be open to changing that? And so he really just kind of like, I think it's a great resource, honestly. Like he gives really good feedback on like what's working and what isn't, and it's free to apply. So I encourage people to just send it in and see how it goes. But yeah, Dan Howarth, and he is a doll. Of course. No, we should have put his information on here. But if you take our information, I can put you in touch with Dan too.
Or the emails on the cards that were on their seats.
Yes, yes. The emails are on the cards as well. All right.
Hi, quick question. So, do you guys also enable Canadian interior design firms as a part of this directory, or is it only US?
I am so sorry. Right now it's just US, but we are hoping to expand beyond that.
Okay, do
I think
want
it was-
your first application here.
No, I really look forward because there are a lot of great designers in Canada, and we live 4 hours from Canada currently, so it seems kind of silly that we can't. But I think it's like a legal thing with the great Condé Nast machine.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Of course. Oh, great.
Hi, in the AD Pro directory, do you have a set limit on the number of people you're going to have per market, or how are you doing that?
We don't have an upper limit at this point. I will tell you right now, I think we're tracking at like 220 members since launching at the end of January, which I think is a pretty healthy level of growth. It's like above what our target was. But right now, there's no upper limit. We're just making sure that everybody's a good quality. And that's, I think, our biggest priority is just making sure we're not dropping our standards. Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
never done this job.
Jillian is
before.
our Vanna White today.
This is new for me.
Hi. In terms of submitting a pitch, what's kind of the timeline for etiquette for waiting in terms of exclusivity?
That's a great question. Do you want to answer this, Mel?
Yeah. And I'm not sure I understand in terms of
So if we're only pitching to AD, for example, how long do we give?
before offering
Before
it to
we-
someone
yes,
else.
yes.
Great question. So with digital content, we have weekly pitch meetings. Ours for AD Pro are on Mondays. Other sections will differ. So I will usually respond when I get a pitch and say, love this. Thank you. I'm going to bring it to our Monday pitch meeting. I'll be in touch to follow. And I would say maybe give me a week after that Monday, just in case. With print, it's a more complicated story. I believe they have monthly pitch meetings for the future stories, and they'll give you those timelines when they reach out. And then even then, sometimes you may be slated for the June issue, but then something happens and you have to move to July. So change can happen when you're working on a print deadline. But I think the editors are always, at least at AD, really good at communicating when it's a pass and when you're good to take it to somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if I mentioned this, where the masthead lives. Did we go over that?
We did not.
We might have skipped this in the slides, but most mastheads these days, when you're looking where to send a pitch and which editor may be the best contact, at least for AD, our masthead lives online, so you can see who those section editors are. We don't offer the exact email address of them, but if you do a little more digging, you could probably find, the format of the email for that company. I know oftentimes when I'm looking at a designer site and it says hello at whatever interior design, I know it's probably your first name at whatever interior design. And you can always send an email to an email you don't know exists. I'm never going to get it, Anything else? Let's see. How are we on time?
We are at 4:45.
Okay. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, we will be partying it up in the showrooms 5 to 7. If you want to come say hi or have any other questions you want to ask, we will be there. Thank you guys so much.